man. Take a good look at him. He's a specialist. He knows exactly how to turn this quiet town into a hell of violence.
The Negroes will literally, and I do mean literally, control the South. Are you willing to fight down to the last ditch and keep fighting till this thing is over?
The Intruder. He made the sleepy town of Caxton his town for his reason. He played on their fears and their hatreds. This town became a headline for the Intruder.
It was very brave of Roger Corman to tackle that, especially when he didn't need to in 1962. He was happily making a string of successful pictures for many years, none of which lost any money. So I want to introduce Dr. Robert Latham. Dr. Robert Latham is professor in the Department of Politics at York University. His publications include Organizing Anti-Capitalist Internationalism in Contemporary and Historical Perspective, Challenging the Right, Augmenting the Left, Recasting Leftist Imagination, among others. So I want to thank you for coming, and hopefully we recognize when the next lying fascist con artist walks into town. Thank you so much.
This here little town's gonna burn. What I mean, it's gonna burn the conscience of the country.
You know, when we use the word populist, right, oftentimes, right, where, you know, one's a distrust of elites, right, is very, very critical to that. Desire to look for some kind of leader, that and an association of us as a people, and whatever that, you know, in terms of the groups that are thinking in that way.
Tribalism.
Yeah, sort of a tribalism, a nativism, but we ourselves are being, you know, screwed over by an elite, and we need someone to restore that true relationship of our relationship to our nation.
They've kept the facts away from you. They've cheated and deceived every one of you. They've filled your heads with filthy lies and kept you in the dark.
When there's two big issues there, I mean, one is the idea that there are these triggers that people have, right? And if you're able to get in front of an audience or just on, you know, a Twitter account or whatever it might be, and you can actually hit those triggers, and no matter who you are in sending that message, if you're sending the right message, in effect, then you get resonance from that, right?
Now, I'm associated with the Patrick Henry Society.
In the film, there's a speech, and I'm not going to give anything away in saying this, but there is a speech, and where Shatner's kind of doing some big rabble-rousing. To put this in perspective, that character, he talks about the Patrick Henry, it's okay to talk, right? To mention that Patrick Henry Society, and that's a society, they really mean the John Birch Society, right? Founded in 1958. And they were making this connection. The black organizations that were emerged, most famously the NAACP, seen as being Jewish-controlled, right? Tied to communism, right? So this whole nexus was in play. They were using blacks to take on and destroy that society, the white Southern society, and ultimately the desire to destroy the entire country and the whole society there, the whole America, the great America. And that's what's going on. And there it is, and they were, I don't know who found out in this film about this, because it only started about 1960. They started with this line in the John Birch Society, and they were going into the South. Welch, who was the founder of the Birch Society, he was going down there, and others were going down there, and putting this line. And here we are in, you know, how many years, you know, 40, 50, 60 years later, and the same logic is still being played. And it was actually the logic that was being played. The Germans, I mean, the Nazis particularly, were putting the same thing out.
I'd mentioned the CBC sort of spoke about this sort of salad bar extremism that's on the right in Canada. I wonder if you could talk about that, where people are sort of picking and choosing or customizing their ideologies. It does get more complicated. You can have somebody who's South Asian or black next to somebody who's a white nationalist, you know. And we spoke about that a little bit about the beginning, more sort of in the US, but if you could speak about Canada, like what's happening here?
Yeah, the first thing is, I mean, when this blanket hatred is gone, then, okay, I'm not hearing that blanket hatred. I'm hearing someone talk about things that I need. And I'm tired of this and that, and too much government. I'm tired of the regulations. You know, these other types of issues.
Wearing masks.
Yeah, wearing
vaccines.
masks. That sort of that, and so on. I don't like the fact that I've got teachers who are coming to school and talking about various genders and so on. Right? I am raised in a certain religious tradition, and when I hear that, that's very scary to me, and I don't want to see my kid exposed to that. On and on. We're hearing a lot of this, right? So this is those types. So they're basically keying in on those issues, sort of life issues that people are very exposed to, that people react to, and kind of find when there isn't a overarching sort of consensus, what we used to call like a liberal consensus, right? That was kind of predominant, then it becomes an open field to exploit.
I think you're right. I think it's about the putting aside the race and the religion, and it seems to be more about, you know, I liked it back how it was back then, where, you know, I didn't have to use pronouns, or I didn't have to, you know, or I could speak to women a certain way, or I could, you know, I didn't have to have sex ed in schools, or, you know, whatever it is. And I think maybe things like that, that's probably what's sort of uniting these folks. So it's not necessarily, yeah, there's the extremist, racist, you don't want to deal with any of them. But I think there's a chunk of them I'm beginning to recognize that sort of feel lost. They don't know where their place is in the world. So I just want to segue into this film, The Intruder. Thank you so much, Dr. Latham, for me to give him a hand. Thank you so much. So after it failed at the box office in '62, it was Roger Corman, instead of going for a prestige sort of bid, he decided to try to go the exploitative route. So he called it Shame, they call it The Stranger, they call it I Hate Your Guts, you know, all sorts of things. One of the posters actually had like a scantily clad woman on it, and, you know, I suppose somebody walking by might think, oh, this is great, Shame, let's see what this is. And of course they'd be completely surprised by the contents of the film. So it cost him about $80,000 to make. He didn't make his money back until very recently, but he felt that this was something that he needed to tackle, and he was spurred on by John F. Kennedy's sort of interest in the civil rights movement, and so that's how you have The Intruder. Hi, everybody. I was interested in programming key black films before 1980, and when a colleague, Arnold, suggested The Intruder, I thought it was a smart move. I tracked down Roger Corman's team, and after months of back and forth, I got Roger Corman's permission to screen the film gratis, 1 year before he died. It asks a question that feels timeless. How do we keep getting here? How does a single charismatic agitator, always a man, convince people to turn on their neighbors and against their own interests? Germany, Cambodia, Darfur, Rwanda, Bosnia, East Timor. History doesn't just echo, it loops. And it doesn't have to be as extreme as genocide. Perhaps it's a human flaw, but somehow we always end up at each other's throats. In The Intruder, that agitator is Adam Kramer, played boldly by a pre-Star Trek William Shatner. Kramer slithers into a southern town to sabotage school integration, not by inventing hate, but by fanning existing flames. Roger Corman, known for horror movies, creates his most horrifying, a drama based in reality and loosely inspired by true events. It's Corman's most horrifying film, not for its genre, but for its subject.
Did you ever stop to think about that? When you let those 10 enter your school, did you?
Corman believed in this story. He and his brother self-financed it. Shatner, then an emerging actor with Broadway and television credentials, including Judgment at Nuremberg for director Stanley Kramer, took the role despite the career risks. Risks that remain real for actors even today. And Shatner remains proud of the role. It was brave. The cast and crew received death threats. The local police had to stand guard. The final scene was filmed as they fled town. While The Intruder was praised in some circles, it also faced criticism. Black characters were pushed to the periphery. The ending felt too convenient. But in 1962, amid the civil rights movement and just 7 years after the murder of Emmett Till, the film was a seismic gesture from filmmakers who had been profiting from teenage monster flicks and pulp. It was a brave move for Roger Corman. Shatner would later say he risked his life to make the film and was heartbroken by its obscurity. What The Intruder reminds us is how easily people can be manipulated by con men, racists, sexists, demagogues who disguise their hate in charm and civility. History doesn't just repeat, it reinvents. Little is known about Barnes, a high school athlete with a brief acting career who passed away in 2005, largely forgotten by film history. We're vulnerable to smooth-talking con men, to cowards who point fingers from the shadows. Most people want the same thing: to be loved, to have purpose, to chase a dream, and to live a life that feels like their own.